I have a real thing for sunsets. And when we go on family vacations, I'm constantly having to stop whatever we're doing and run outside and see the sunset, especially if we're in a lovely location like the mountains or the ocean. And even at home, I do it because the way our house is situated, the sun typically sets during the right time of year right out the back of the house. And we get these beautiful sunsets on a regular basis during the late spring and early summer. So we'll be in the middle of dinner and I'll make everybody stop so I can go outside and have a sunset moment. I understand that sunrises are also lovely, but since I'm not a morning person, I would not know. The only time I'm likely to see a sunrise is if I'm on the West Coast. That's the only time you will ever find me being a morning person. But that, of course, makes me think of the words that we have in Lamentations 3:22 and 23 regarding the mercies of God. It says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." And I would imagine that for the believer who loves sunrises, that is a reminder to them of the renewed mercies of God every morning. For me, I'm going to have to settle with a sunset. But that is what those moments do for us so often. They refocus us on a truth. And by seeing that landscape, we understand or remember something that we knew to be true. That view tells us something that we need to hang on to. The mercy of God being new every morning, being inexhaustible, is something that every believer clings to. We don't ever want to think that we could out-sin the mercies of God. And the good news is that we never can, just as there will always be another sunrise and another sunset. As long as that endures, the mercy of God will endure and even beyond. So we can cling to that. But we'll need that view. We'll need to have that view in view, if you will, if we are to live a life that demonstrates mercy toward others, not just a life that understands mercy for us ourselves. Listen to Romans 12:1. This is in the NIV. "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, which is your true and proper worship." It's in view of God's mercies, with that in view, that we are reminded that there's no sacrifice that we can make during this life that would not be befitting a follower of Christ to make. And that we are at our most worshipful when we live our lives in view of God's mercy. That He not only extended forgiveness to us, but He did so and He does so over and over and over again. I love that Romans passage because it makes me think about the story of Peter when he says to Jesus, "So how many times should I forgive my neighbor? Should I forgive 7 times?" And Peter actually thinks that he's said a really great thing here. He's shot high on what the common teaching was of the rabbis at his time. The rabbis would have said, forgive someone 3 times, but after that, you're not obligated to anymore. So what does he do? He chooses this nice biblical number, 7, this number of completeness, and says to Jesus, should I forgive that many times? He's expecting to get straight A's. He thinks he has given the best answer. And yet Jesus comes back and says, I tell you, Peter, to forgive 77 times. And so he takes Peter's 7, his number of completeness, and then he multiplies it by 10, another number for completeness. And then he adds another 7 on there just to make it even harder on Peter with his response, or perhaps more instructive for all of us. What is he saying? Peter, you should forgive completeness times completeness plus completeness. You should forgive to the uttermost. Why? Because that's what you do in view of God's mercy. That's what you do when you understand the vista of the mercy that's been extended to you through Christ. So I don't know which you love, sunsets or sunrises, but what if this week you stood in view of God's mercy before whichever vista it is that's yours? And what if, as you're reminded of God's renewed faithfulness to you, you brought to mind someone who perhaps your mercies have grown cold for? Maybe it's someone who you've forgiven in the past, and now you've sort of rehearsed once again in your memory the hurt, and it's been stirred up again. Will you commit this week to pray for that person and ask the Lord to restore in your heart a complete mercy for them? A mercy that is new every morning, just as God's mercies are new toward us in Christ.